Alrighty, guys. We have welcome back to Corey's confusing book reviews, where he's getting progressively tired as he goes through the stack of books that he has to review today. And so my book reviews, in case you're just joining us for the first time, is just my random books that I've been reading lately, and we try to poorly describe what I have read. And my thoughts about said reading. But so next up today, so if you we'll just do the thing. So we're doing the Clean Coder, a code of conduct for professional programmers by Robert C. Martin. This is a follow-up. Back up a little bit. If you are not a programmer, or in the software development industry, or that kind of whole sphere or whatever, you could just skip this video. That's the too long didn't watch. If you are, I would say it's a good book. It's about the ethics of programming and professional, specifically the professional ethics of programming, and I think a discussion that needs to happen more in our field, but I think it's a must read in that capacity. Yeah, that's the too long didn't watch. This is if you want to stick around, this is the rest of the thing. So this is the follow up to basically kind of a follow up. You don't have to have, I don't think you have to have read this book, but this is like the second book in the Clean Code series. There's several different books, but this was the first, called Clean Code. And all of the books are like Clean something or other. And this one is the Clean Coder. It talks about the person doing the actual work. First one was about the code. This one's about the person doing the work. So yes, let's do the blurb on the back. The Clean Coder are much anticipated follow-ups of Bob Martin's highly praised Clean Code. Programmers who endure and succeed amidst swirling uncertainty and nonstop pressure to share a common attribute. They care deeply about the practice of creating software. They treat it as a craft and they are professionals. In the Clean Coder, a code of conduct for professional programmers, legendary software expert Robert C. Martin introduces the disciplines, techniques, tools, and practices of true software craftsmanship. This book is packed with practical advice about everything from estimating and coding to refactoring and testing, and it covers much more than technique. It is about attitude. Martin shows how to approach software development with honor, respect, and pride. Work well, work clean, communicate and estimate faithfully, face difficult decisions with clarity and honesty, and understand the deep knowledge comes with responsibility to act. Yes. Why is this? I just noticed something. This is very weird about this book. It's a reprinting. It has this on the back. You see how it's cutting off like the text there? That's actually not a sticker. It's just there. Right? So weird. That's the flub, ain't it? Now for the good stuff. Scan me. I don't know what that means. Somebody's probably scanning it right now and getting their free pizza or something other that came with the book. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't scanned it, so I don't know what it is. Yeah, this is all about professionalism and honestly the lack thereof in our profession. I'm very much. By the way, if you have not followed, you didn't see my previous book, previous video on the previous book. I'll just say this again: if you haven't watched Robert C. Martin talk, or Uncle Bob Martin talk, he is an excellent conference speaker. And I would be remiss not to mention that you have to check out some of his talks. He's an excellent speaker. He rubs some people the wrong way, but I think he's fantastic. And yeah, so this book is all about, and something that he talks about even in the talks as well, is about the duty of our craft. Specifically, you have accountants, right? Accountants have a certain professional conduct. They have like double entry bookkeeping is one of his examples. and that his analogy for our profession is double entry bookkeeping for programmers is TDD, is that we write tests for all the code that we write. That's the practice that turned accounting into a profession. Lawyers have ethical things that they have to do as part of their craft. Famously, what is it? Lawyers? They have like, what is it? The client confidentiality or something like that. That's part of their professional attorney-client privilege or whatever. That's part of their professional conduct. Medicine famously has the do no harm or whatever principle code or whatever it is as part of their professional code. And all of these have this all of these professional professions have ethics as part of their craft. And his argument is that programmers have the same ethics, even, and that sooner or later, and I think he's absolutely right about this, sooner or later, something will happen and our industry will get regulated in the same way that the medicine is regulated, same way that lawyers are going to. Eventually, there's going to be some software-related incident, and the public is no longer going to put up with the crap, the utter crap that we try to pass off as code, as deliverable software. I don't know when. I don't want to know when it's going to evolve, but I mean, one of the I guess somewhat recent examples, has been a while now, was the Dieselgate, right? Where the programmers were faking the emissions from what was it? Volkswagen. Volkswagen diesel engines were programmed to fake their emission test results. So if they knew they were in a testing facility, they rejiggered the machine, the engine parameters to pass the emissions test while it was in the testing facility. But like in actual use, it was nothing. It was nothing like the normal operating parameters under normal use. That kind of thing. And I think those like what I think they talked about it is that, you know, the executives and everything, well, the programmers are the ones who did it, you know. That's where the blame's with the person who had to write the code had to have, they weren't ethical when they wrote that code, right? And they are ultimately to blame. You can't, just like a lawyer can't shirk their responsibility, just like an engineer. We're supposed to be software engineers, just like an engineer can't shirk their responsibility to certify an engineering drawing. We can't shirk our responsibility to be ethical and practice due diligence when we're writing code. And that's basically the big point of the book and a big point of Martin's talks. But this book in particular, it talks about different things. He talks about just general professionalism, you know, showing up on time and stuff like that, and dealing with conflict. You know, some of the stuff that maybe seems kind of basic or whatever, but maybe needs to be talked about, because we have a profession is filled with a certain type of individual that maybe, I don't know. I know Asperger's is like a real thing or whatever, but if there's one thing that quickly describes it, is maybe we have a prevalence of Asperger's spectrum type people in our organizations that do this in our profession. So we need a little bit of work there, you know, maybe more than, you know, maybe some other professions, but yeah. So it has some of that stuff. It talks about testing, you know, how to go about dealing with saying no, right? Because sometimes you need to be able to say no, and you're not professional if you can't say no. If there's no way for you to say anything other than yes to your boss or to the stakeholders or whatever, then you're not a professional, right? And you need to be able to say no. I don't mean like you say no and you get fired. That organization is, they're not going to last very long, right? And uh, uh, we need reasonable ways to be able to say no. We can't do this, but maybe we can do that, or But in general, is like when you're asked, especially like the Dieselgate stuff, I'm like, that should have been a no, just a hard no. We can't do that. Like, I think the most common example that we'll see, like I do mostly web development, and many programmers do web development. I think probably the most common example of saying no is people are almost always asked to implement a login system. And I think that should be one of the first no's. Is that no, we're not going to implement a login system. We're going to use this off-the-shelf tested solution, or we're going to just hook it up, the plumbing or whatever, but we're not going to implement one from scratch. And unless, there's a commitment to like fully engineer that solution, like really engineer that solution, because that's a security thing. Perhaps a little bit more trivial is like, we're not going to store our passwords in plain text in the database. It's going to be hashed and salted. That's just, and any requests other than that, if they try to specify no, all passwords have to be stored in plain text, we're going to say no. That's professionalism, right? Is saying no, I'm not going to do that. That's terrible. That's how everybody gets their accounts compromised, because when you get hacked and they read the database, the hacker reads the database, now they got all the credentials for every user, which then they could probably use on other sites because people reuse their passwords. That's the issue with password sharing, right? Storing passwords in plain text is password sharing, really, more than anything. So yeah. There's a lot to say on this topic, right? He talks a little bit about estimation. Estimation, I think this is probably one area I don't usually disagree with Martin. I honestly, I take his word probably a little too much as gospel than I should. Obviously, with insanity, but probably the biggest deviant that I have is he talks about estimation. He was like, you should always give a range for estimates and everything. I said, well, I think and this is where I disagree with him. I think the default position for estimates should be no. Is that we should always be working to strive to get the relationship to the point where we don't do estimates at all. Because I think there's this look up the no estimates, look up no estimates or hashtag no estimates on YouTube or whatever. You'll come across the talk by Alan Holcomb or whatever. And he breaks it all down about why estimates are a bunch of hogwash and they're a complete waste of time. And I do mean, I was firmly convinced when I watched this, I was like, he is absolutely right. They're a complete waste of time. Nevertheless, we have to do them, with certain clients, with certain stakeholders, and so because they cannot operate in that fashion, rather. And a big part of it, many times, is trust, right? You don't have a trust. Maybe you're working for the client for the first time, and they're not willing to say, "Hey, I can't tell you what all is going to be done in 3 months. So I can't say, well, here's the 20 things. This is going to take 3 months or whatever to get everything done, and this is everything." Or it might take 3 to 4 months. We put a range on it, and it's still bullshit numbers, right? We all know that the numbers are bullshit about how long things take. But the client they can't operate with that certainty, or at least with the level of trust that they have for a new relationship to do that, right? You can't say, let's do 2 weeks. It's going to cost this much with this much manpower for 2 weeks. Let's see what gets done now. Here's what you want this done first, and then this done next. And then we're going to do a list of priorities. And we think, here's the priority list of things that we've done. And let's look at it. Let's go regroup after 2 weeks and see what gets done. And if we're still on track, then we'll say, okay, let's do another 2 weeks. Let's do the next month and see what we get done in that time. basically limiting risk by limiting budget, right? Instead of trying to limit risk by estimating how things going to cost in 6 months or a year or whatever, because we don't know. But we have a pretty good idea of what we can get done over the next 2 weeks, maybe, or the next month. We have a decent idea. And if we're wildly wrong, it's only 2 weeks. It's only a month. You haven't wasted a year or 2 years on this development effort to get to the end of it and find out the project is way off track or failing or whatever like that. So anyway, that takes a lot of trust. And I think it takes a commitment from the sales team not to be talking in terms of estimation, sales team and for management not to be talking about estimation, estimate ranks or everything. I think there's this fallacy to think that if we're constantly iterating, constantly looking at our estimates and they'll get better. They'll get better if we'll do the estimates this time, but and then we'll check in after a month and see if our estimates are right, and then we'll eventually learn over time. But the thing is this has been studied. It doesn't work. Estimates are way off. Like I can't remember the numbers. I'm not going to try to quote the numbers, but way off. Like. So off that they're actually they're basing business decisions off of these estimates is lunacy, right? Like if you knew how inactive the estimates are, you would realize that maybe we'll use a different strategy. Like if we fully internalize how bad estimates are. If the client could fully internalize how bad the estimates are and how useless they are, they would use a different strategy to limit risk, because that's the whole point behind estimates is limiting risk. We want to figure out how much things cost. That's a way of limiting risk, right? And another way to limit to limit risk is just you can still limit costs. You can still say, well, I'm going to commit $30,000 to this effort, and we'll see where we go. That's how you limit risk, right? It doesn't change anything. We're no longer making the fake numbers, right? We're not spending hours pointing tickets and stuff like that. I get that that's the standard of practice, and I get why people stick to them, but I'm going off way on a tangent here. We're back on the book. He talks about estimates. Maybe that's the one area where I disagree. It's an excellent book. I can't believe I'm going on this rant. We've probably spent the last 10 minutes being ranting about estimates. But anybody who reads this that works with me, yes, we will continue doing estimates. I still think they're pointless, but we'll continue doing estimates. I will do my best. But they're fake numbers, guys. Anyway, Clean Coder, a code of conduct for professional programmers by Robert C. Martin. Highly recommend. I will see you guys next week with, I'm guessing, Index Card RPG. See you guys. Bye.